Welcome to what is now our season wrap-up edition of Upon Further Review. My name is John Enrietto. I'm the sports editor of the Butler Eagle newspaper, flanked by sports writer Derek Pyda. Mike Kilroy is normally with us. He is unfortunately under the weather today and will not be joining us. We are sponsored. We'd like to thank our sponsors for the entire season: Troy Allen Chevrolet, Buick GMC, Butler Health System, and Conlon Tarker. And Derek, the football season ended with a bit of a thud last weekend. I'm going to jump right into this with you. You covered the Karns City game at Wilmington, a 42-14 Gremlin loss. What's your take on what happened to KC out there?
Well, after the game, I was talking to Wilmington coach Brandon Fillion, as you mentioned last week, a longtime assistant under Terry Varelli, and he told me, actually the group of reporters that was there, the District 10 championship game against Farrell, he was actually kind of disappointed. They won the game 19-14. He said his special teams and his defense played really well, but he really felt that his offense left a lot to be desired, left some points on the field. And the goal going into the Karns City game was to have a total team effort. And boy, did they ever. I mean, obviously the offense, the running game got going. The quarterback who runs out of the wing tee, he made a lot of plays with his legs. They had a special teams touchdown with a kid returning a kickoff 77 yards for a touchdown. And obviously the defense holding Karns City to 14 points and scoreless in the first half. It was just a team win. They accomplished their goal of entering the next round of the state playoffs with a complete team victory. And you know what? I was thinking about this on the drive home. Unless you win the state championship, everybody's season ends in disappointment. Unless you go to Hershey and win.
Yep.
But along the way, there are teams that accomplish a lot, and obviously Karns City is one of those teams, winning the first District 9 title since 2017, and the first under Coach Joe Sherwin. So Gremlins have a lot to be proud of. They got beat pretty handily, but look, a lot of teams lose to Wilmington. They're undefeated for a reason. They're a great team, great program.
Yeah, when you run a wing T offense in high school, if you've got multiple weapons like Wilmington clearly has, that makes that offense just so difficult for a high school defense to defend, doesn't it? It sounds to me, you were at the game, it sounds to me like they ran your wing T to a T, and again, it's just enhanced by so many different weapons.
Yeah, actually, they scored an early touchdown on Karns City. Wilmington did. And then the next two drives, Karns City's defense forced a 3-and-out. I think Wilmington had a combined 4 or 5 yards on the next two drives combined. And then Wilmington came out in their fourth drive and kind of spread things out a little bit. And that's when they scored their second touchdown on a 60-yard touchdown run by their quarterback. You know, in a lot of wing T offenses, the quarterback, obviously, he's not going to throw the ball a whole lot. But at the same time, a lot of wing T offenses, the onus is basically on the running back. We know this from Mars. I mean, look at Teddy Ruffner, what he's been able to do. This wing T offense, their quarterback's obviously he's obviously athletic. I mean, he scored 3 touchdowns in the first half on 85 yards rushing.
Right.
So their wing T, that just shows you wing Ts are set up differently. You can have one school running the wing T and another school running the wing T. But in their offense, the quarterback really does he gains a lot of those rushing yards, and he proved it Friday night. That 60-yard touchdown run was, I mean, he basically outran even the secondary. And Karns City's got some athletes in that secondary.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, what impressed me most about Karns City's postseason run here is that they got 2 playoff wins over teams that beat them during the regular season and beat them in different fashion. You remember the Central Clarion game that was played down at KC. The Gremlins had that game seemingly in hand going into the fourth quarter. They had a collapse in that quarter. They had a few turnovers. Central Clarion got some momentum and took it from them. And then, of course, we all know what Brookville did to Karns City in the regular season up at Brookville, just totally mauled them. For the Gremlins to come back and score 2 playoff wins over those 2 teams is pretty impressive in my view.
Yeah, when you get beat like that, number one, I'm going to first move to the District 9 championship game they played against Brookville. Just, a month earlier, Karns City goes up to Brookville and loses 44-0. As a head coach, you obviously you have to make sure that your kids are prepared from a tactical standpoint, knowing where they need to be. But it's psychological too. You're going up against a team in a district championship game that just shut you out by 44 points a month earlier. So I think Joe Sherwin and his staff, and obviously the players too, they deserve a lot of credit for going into that Brookville game with the right mindset. And you brought up the Central Clarion game. You have a team beat, and they ended up scoring. I think Central Clarion scored 4 touchdowns in that fourth quarter.
They did. Yep.
You know, that can be playing on your mind too. And they met them in the district semifinals. I covered that game as well, and I believe it was 34-9. So 2 impressive turnarounds for Karns City from the regular season result to what they were able to do in the postseason against both Central Clarion in the semis and then Brookville in the district final.
Well, a game that Mike got covered last week, and this was a game that I really admit on this show last week, I totally miscalled this game. I thought North Catholic's offense wouldn't have its way against Elizabeth Forward, but would certainly scored enough points to win a football game. Elizabeth Forward comes over to Mars, which is basically North Catholic's home field. They shut them out 17-0. They blank a team that had averaged 44 points per game going during the regular season. How do you view – I mean, I know neither one of us saw the game. My crew covered it. But how do you view the way North Catholic season ended last week?
It surprised me. I number one, I thought Elizabeth Forward would win the game. I thought it was going to be low scoring, but I never would have picked them to get shut out. But, you know, I talked to EF's coach last week for the preview, Mike Colodi, and he was talking about, you know, a lot of times coaches they kind of like to downplay their own team. They know they're good. But when they're talking to reporters, they don't want to boast too much.
Sure.
He made no he left no disagreement or left no doubt about his defense. Pointed out last year the only team in Whitfield AAA that had a better overall team defense than Elizabeth Forward was Aliquippa. And he said they brought like 8 starters back from that team. So he was really confident about that defense. I doubt he would have said that, hey, we're going to go out and shut North Catholic out, but he knew they had the kids that could match up with North Catholic's talent. And let's face it, we know North Catholic has a lot of talent on that offense. So for EF to go out and shut them out, man, they must have a really good offense. A defense. Now you got the Whitfield Championship game. That defense that just shut out North Catholic, they're going to have another incredibly impressive performance because now they're going up against Central Valley, who was the one team entering the playoffs that was seated higher than North Catholic. Central Valley they're a freight train this year, so we'll see how that turns out.
They really are. Yeah. My hat's off without even seeing them play. My hat is off to the Elizabeth Forward defense. I mean, Central Catholic or North Catholic. I'm sorry. We know the weapons that they have. The quarterback, the running back. They have receivers. I mean, so like I said, they average 44 points per game. They scored a lot of points against some pretty decent teams, and to have a goose egg hung on them. What can I say? I know North Catholic had some turnovers in that game that certainly helped Elizabeth Forward's cause. But my hat's off to EF without even seeing them play. That's an impressive win. Well, let's switch over to our discussion for the week. Like I said, it's a review type of show, so we'll say we will keep it in that mode right here. Derek, I'd like to know what happened this football season that surprised you the most. That's the first question I'm going to ask you.
I would say Freeport, and right off the bat, you look at their final record, including their playoff loss to Elizabeth Forward 2 Fridays ago, and they finished with a 3-3 record. Okay, 3-3, but you got to remember they lost their starting quarterback right before the season started to testicular cancer. Then their backup comes in 3 weeks into the season. They decide to move their running back Ben Lane into the quarterback position. And who would have thought? And here's the thing. It's not like the games they ended up winning, they won 10-7. I mean, that kid, Ben Lane, when he took over quarterback, that offense became very potent. And that surprised me. I would have thought if you would have told me that Freeport was going to make the playoffs, I would have think, okay, they're going to have to do it pretty much all with defense. And obviously their defense was good this year. But Ben Lane running the Wildcat at quarterback, and for a running back, he has a good arm. I covered their regular season game against Burrow. I mean, this kid was throwing, 25, 30 yards down the seam and hitting guys sometimes in tight windows. So if you want to, I'd say Freeport is my biggest surprise. But if you want to condense it further, I would say the quarterback play of a running back, Ben Lane. I was very impressed with the way he played quarterback this year. And obviously, that was a big reason why they did end up getting to the playoffs too.
Mm-hmm. Which makes you wonder, with the projected starter this year coming back, presumably next year after his cancer treatments, do you stay with Ben Lane at quarterback, which would be his junior year, or do you go back to this kid who will be a senior next year? It's going to be an interesting little choice for John Gaylord and the Freeport coaching staff.
Yeah, luckily they got a while to figure it out. But man, with as well as Ben Lade played this year, I think a lot of it's going to come down to the kid coming back from his cancer ordeal. Can he play another position? Is there, could he be a wide receiver? Can he contribute somewhere else? I would find it hard to take Ben Lane out of the quarterback position. This was his first year he played basically half a season at that position.
Right.
Now, once teams get some film on him, maybe they are able to come up with, a better defense to defend against a Ben Lane-led Freeport team next year. But the kid shows a lot of skill, and he throws a nice ball. So I would say John Gaylord might be able to shed some light on this, but I think Freeport and their coaching staff, it's a good problem to have. It really is, because you in your mind, you have two capable guys. You know what Ben Lane's capable of. Obviously, the starter coming into this year, he was projected to be the starter, so they knew what he had. So we'll have to see how things go. But man, Ben Lane, I would find it hard to take him out of that quarterback position.
Well, of course, the other way to look at that too is if the senior next year, if this kid can play, and my guess is that he can play. There's nothing wrong with having a running back who can throw the football. I mean, it could if you move Ben Lane back to running back, all of a sudden you've got an offense with multiple options, and they could be really hard to defend then.
Marcus Allen.
What's that?
Marcus Allen, he could throw.
Yeah. There you go. My biggest surprise, I'm gonna go right back to Karns City, and when the season started, I did not think they had a chance to win the Division 9 title for one reason only, and that was Brookville. I mean, I knew how good Brookville was going to be. Brookville handed it to them in the regular season. Obviously, it was Karns City's worst game of the year, probably Brookville's best game of the year that night. By the same token, there's no way I even imagined they would go up to Brookville or go up north and beat Brookville in a D9 title game, even with the COVID situation that Brookville faced with a couple starters out. To me, that Karns City upset of Brookville in the D9 title game, that's my biggest surprise of this season. My second note on this looking back question is, what's the best game that you saw personally this season?
It was the Montauk regular season game up at DuBois back. I think it was the first Friday in October. There wasn't a whole lot of points scored. There was, I think it was 19-16, 3 lead changes in that game. But the last lead change came with 3 seconds left. DuBois scored on a short touchdown run. I believe it was from the 1-yard line. But just, and this game didn't really have, it's not a lot of games are built, 4-0 against, 4-0 or 5-0 against 4-1. And the records just say, hey, this is going to be a big game. This was a game between two teams that entered that game with losing records, but I just really enjoyed the effort. The fact that Montauk took the lead with, I think it was like 2.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. DuBois gets the ball back one last time. They drive down, score basically on the last play of the game. There was like 3 seconds left. Montauk had one last chance, and a Hail Mary fell incomplete near the end zone. But it was, hey, John, anytime I go to DuBois, I enjoy myself. But that game's going to stick out. And honestly, I'll be honest with you, it's going to be a game. When you think about it, how many times do you cover a football game where the game's decided on the last play? Not many games are decided on the last play. So kudos to DuBois and Montauk for showing that effort. And it's going to I'll remember for a long time. Unfortunately for Montauk, they lost, but it was a great effort. 19-16 DuBois.
I'm going to go with 2 games here for 2 totally different reasons. One is ironically, I had the same final score, 19-16. I'm talking about the Seneca Valley overtime win over Baldwin on a Saturday afternoon down at Nexter Stadium. Just a defensive slobber knocker of a game. Most of that game, I know Josh Miller and Connor Lysick for Seneca Valley, I remember, had huge games that day. They ended up winning on an overtime rushing touchdown after Baldwin tied the game late regulation and then kicked a field goal on their possession in overtime. Then Seneca scored a rushing touchdown to win the game. That was the best game that I saw in terms of on the field. But another game I have to mention, and there's a reason why I mention this, is Butler playing Siprock at the Butler. 28-3 win. It doesn't sound like that much in terms of final score, but just the fact that it was two local teams who had never played each other, meeting each other, something that I've lobbied for years since I've been in a Butler. I love the games like when Montauk plays Karns City, when Slip Rock plays Grove City, when North Allegheny plays Seneca Valley, when Mars plays Mock. Games like that. We could have more games like that in this region, and we simply don't. For example, I'm talking about, Slip Rock and Karns City should play each other. Mars should play Seneca Valley. Butler should play Knock. I'm talking about matchups like that. I know you have your section play and you have to take care of conference, and I get all that, and I'm not lobbying that be stopped. But I would love to see more non-conference games take place with local teams playing each other. I'm in a bowling league on Thursday nights, and you wouldn't believe the talk the night before that Slip Rock Butler game. They were talking about, at the time, Butler had 1 win, Slip Rock had 2 wins, and the game was being talked about because it was local versus local, and I think really that's what high school football should be all about. I'd be curious as your take on that.
I think the more backyard or you can't really call Butler Slippery Rock a rivalry because they've never played, but backyard matchups, I'm all for them. Obviously, like you said, you have to have your conference play. I mean, with Karns City, they're going to be playing the Central Clarions, the Brookvilles. Those are the teams in their conference. But with open dates, I'm all for teams doing everything they can to, schedule a team that's, 15, 20 miles away. You remember about a decade ago, and both of these games went Mars's way, but for the first time, and I think it was like 68 years or something like that, Mars played Butler 2 years in a row. I think you covered those games.
They did, and Mars hammered Butler both games. I remember that well. And I wanted to go to another sport where boys basketball, where Butler played Karns City in a Christmas tournament title game in Butler. This is back in the days of when Patrick Craig was a standout center for KC, and Karns City came into Butler and beat Butler by 35 points. And I even remember the score. It was 87-52, which shows you it does the size of the school. And I know people like to harp on that. It oftentimes doesn't matter. I mean, if you got a solid football team, you've got a solid football team. If you got a solid basketball team, you have a solid basketball team. It doesn't matter how big your school is. I would just love to see local teams play each other around here a little bit more than they do. That's why I bring up that Slippery Rock Butler game. I would love to see those two teams, play again down the road. I don't know if that'll happen, but I would love to see it.
I want to throw one thing out there. You mentioned basketball.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I believe it was Mars opened up the season at the Slippery Rock tip-off tournament, girls.
Yep.
And they met each other in the title game. And I'm telling you what, this game was like 5 or 6 days into December, and it literally was played like it was a playoff game. And I really enjoyed it. In fact, I think I wrote a column right after I covered that game. I think Mars won, but man, what a game. I mean, the girls were just laying out for balls on the court, just flying around. And the fact that it was 2 county teams, and we knew as a paper it was going to get interest from both sides. It was a really joy to cover. It really was.
That's what I'm talking about. That's exactly, and the reason why it was so spirited, because it was local neighborhood versus local neighborhood. That's what it's all about. Let's switch gears here. Obviously, we have no upcoming games to do an over under for, so I've invoked a kind of a retroactive type of over under situation. I've got 3 categories here. Going back to the start of the season, Derek, if I had given you this over under before anyone even played a game, tell me if you would have gone over or under. Number of Butler wins this year, 1.5. Before the season even started, would you have gone over or under there?
I would have definitely gone under. Pretty much all season when we did our picks for Butler's game, whoever they were playing, I basically said I'm going to find it very hard to pick Butler until they actually go out and win. And then they went out and beat Blackhawk, and then I kind of jumped on their bandwagon.
Yeah.
I picked them against Slippery Rock, and I picked them in the last game, which wasn't played, unfortunately, because of COVID. I picked them against Erie, but I would have picked under. But, for a program that had gone so long without a win, just the fact that those kids were able to walk off the field twice this year, not once but twice, just the feeling of, hey, we did what we needed to do to win a game. some programs take that for granted. It shouldn't be taken for granted at Butler. Now, obviously, the next step for them, because the two programs they beat this year, they beat Slippery Rock, which is a 3A team, and they beat Blackhawk,
Right.
who is a 4A team. I would think that the goal next year, one of the goals should be, okay, let's go out and beat a team that's 6A like we are.
Of course. Yep.
Erie, McDowell, whoever. But you can't. It has to be. You like to get to where you want to go, just boom. And sometimes there's steps that have to be taken in between. And this was a big step for Butler. Just the fact that they walked off the field as victors this year. Now they can move forward and set another goal. We'll see what happens next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I saw Butler's schedule at the start of the year, this was their pre-COVID schedule. I would have gone over on the 1.5. When I saw their revised schedule, the post-COVID schedule, if you will, and I saw them having to play Cathedral Prep twice and McDowell twice, there I probably would have gone under. I thought they would split with Erie High School. Obviously, they didn't have a chance to get the rematch with them. But so I guess I'm kind of wishy-washy there. The pre-COVID schedule, I'm going over. Post-COVID schedule, I would have gone under. How about Teddy Ruffner rushing yardage? Bear in mind, when I give you this total, it would have been with the reduced schedule in terms of number of games played, 1,400.5. Would you have gone over or under preseason on that for Teddy Ruffner?
Well, I figured Mars was going to make the playoffs, at least one playoff game, and that's what they ended up, because they went to the playoffs, lost to TJ. But I'm looking at this 8 games, which is how many they played, for 1,400 yards. You basically need to rush for 175, and I thought he was capable of averaging that. So I would have went over there, but I do have to call myself out on this. At the start of the season, I also said he would win the scoring trophy with under 110 points scored. And Teddy Ruffner this year scored 144 points. So I was way off on that. But as far as yardage goes, I would have said he went over. He would have gone over 1,400, and he did. He rushed for almost 1,600 yards.
Yeah, I had to assume Mars would play like 7 games or so. I also wasn't sure if, again, no one was sure if everybody was going to play every game scheduled. That this year, every team didn't do that. Obviously, Mars was one of the teams that got through unscathed that way. I would have probably gone a little bit under, to be honest. He just had, to me, an incredible senior year. I mean, it's not often when you take the field as an offense, or I'm sorry, you take the field as a defense, knowing full well that 90% of the time, one certain player is going to get the football, and you still can't stop them. That doesn't just say a lot for Teddy Ruffner. It says a lot for that offensive line, the tight end who blocks for the other backs, wide receivers who block from out on the outside. Just an incredible offense that Mars runs, and kudos to Teddy Ruffner. He was even more productive than I thought he would be this year.
Yeah, and let's not forget that he also Teddy Ruffner. Scott Heinauer told me, I didn't know this was the case, in their conference, you can only make first team on one side of the ball. You can't make –
right.
If Scott Heinauer said if that wasn't a rule, if you were able to make first team all-conference on both sides of the ball, he would absolutely be a first team all-conference linebacker. He's really good on defense too.
No doubt. I saw him play. I would totally agree with that. And my last over-under preseason, again, going back to preseason, Butler County schools playoff wins. I had an over-under here at 3.5 before the season started. Would you have gone over or under that total?
I probably would have gone over. I would have gone at least 4 or 5 playoff wins. It's just look at a school like Mars. Yeah, the team lost 1 game during the regular season. Yeah, it was a blowout, but it was to an undefeated team in Plum. They go 6-1 in the regular season, Mars does, and they draw Thomas Jefferson in the first round. I mean, Thomas Jefferson's the defending state champion. I mean, I would have gone over. I thought our teams would have been able to get maybe a better seed, better playoff positioning, at least entering that first round, and I think I definitely would have gone over here. And as it turned out, what did we have, 3? We
had 3, right? 1 for North Catholic, 2 for Karns City. Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. I would have probably gone over also. And just the number of teams I anticipated getting into the playoffs. But we did have to consider, we knew the playoff field was going to be tough this year because of the COVID, some schedule adjustments. But, yeah, I would have gone over that actually too. Unfortunately, it was under for the season. Well, let's review our season's final standings. And we got to talk about Scoop's future for 2021 here because let's face it, Scoop, strong finish for Scoop, but a rough year overall. What are our final prediction standings here, Derek?
Well, last week, of course, we only had 2 games. I went 2-0.
Yep.
Unfortunately, both of our local teams lost.
I know.
Breaks my heart.
I know.
John, you went 1-1.
Yep.
Scoop went 1-1, and Mike went 0-2. So our final standings, John, this is pretty impressive. I mean, you win our picks by 4 games. That's pretty good. You went 55-15.
Yeah, I'll take that record. Yep.
55-15.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Scoop tied. Scoop and I tied at 51-19, and Mike was 50-20. So we all hit the 50 win mark. Hey, in a year with COVID, you know, we're always shooting for like 100. I mean, it wasn't going to happen this year with the shortened schedules. We all finished with 50 wins, but hats off to you, John. You won by 4 games with 55 wins.
All right. Well, you know, Scoop's predecessor years back, I'm not even sure if you were here then. I think you might have been. Was a guy by the name of I.B. Wright. Do you remember I.B. Wright, or did he predate?
He predated me, but I saw his column on Archive many times.
I.B. Wright was chased out of town, quite frankly, because he just struggled. He had 2 or 3 really bad years straight. He was chased out of here, and Scoop swept in, no pun intended, and flew in, took over, and but I'll tell you what, I've never seen a bird sweat before, but Scoop has to be sweating now because he struggled this year. What is Scoop's future here? What do you think?
Well, you know, right now I think he's still kind of riding the coattails of that 2018 season when he went 102-14. That was
a big year, huge year. Yep.
He had a huge year, but you know, at some point, you know, it's what have you done for me lately? And Scoop, he's spending too much time on the nest. He's got to get out there and spread his wings a little bit.
Yeah, we may have to have him give him 1 more year, because you're right. That 2018 year, I guess we can give him a couple of downers after a year like that one. So we'll see what happens with Scoop next year. And then our final category, the how about category. I got to go soccer. Derek, pretty amazing to me when we had 8 soccer teams from Butler County reach the district finals, and we have 5 of those move on into the state playoffs. Of course, the only way you can make the PIAA playoffs this year in soccer is to be a district champion. So 5 of our 8 teams won district titles. Your thoughts on our postseason performance by our local soccer teams?
Well, we talk a lot about Mars's program, both boys and girls. Karns City's program, both boys and girls. But, you know, when you get down to it, we have a lot of really good soccer programs in the county. Slippery Rock in District 10. Mm-hmm. Butler girls playing for a Whitfield championship this year, and they lost.
And losing an absolute heartbreaker.
Heartbreaker. Yep. But one thing, you know, the state playoffs may be condensed, only district champions.
Right.
But in the Whitfield, they were not condensed this year. Depending on the class, there was either 12 or 16 playoff teams, and that was a full field. So there was nothing watered down about the Whitfield playoffs this year. And, you know, Karns City girls play Clearfield in the district championship game, a rematch from last year. Last year, Karns City won.
Right.
This year, Clearfield won. Karns City's boys played Punxsutawney. Last year, Punxsutawney won that game in the championship game. This year, it turned around. Karns City won. So in those districts where you have so few teams, you run into a lot of rematches in you know, the semifinals, the district championship games. Unfortunately for Karns City's girls, Clearfield, I was surprised by this. Clearfield is really fast up front, and we'll find out the result of this game. We might even be covering. They play North Catholic in the first round of the state playoff on Saturday. Clearfield does. Unfortunately for Karns City's girls, they weren't able to bring the district title home, but we know they have so much hard work at that school.
Oh my gosh! Yep.
What a great program they are, and the Karns City's boys turned it around. They had not won a district championship since 2016. They bring it home. They beat Punxsutawney, so they're headed to the state playoffs. But on the girls' side, we have North Catholic and Mars. On the boys' side, Seneca Valley, Karns City, and Mars. All of them, with the exception of Karns City. Karns City actually plays tomorrow night. They have to play a Tuesday game. The other 4 teams, if they win 2 games, they're going to Hershey. And
that's right.
I can't put it past any of them. I'm not saying they're all going to get there, but it would not surprise me if they do.
I would agree. Just the 2 games that I saw Saturday. Mars girls, you mentioned them. They faced a Plum team that has scored 93 goals this year. That's only 5 goals fewer than Mars scored. And Mars limited Plum to 2 shots on net and 2 corner kicks that entire game. But by comparison, Mars had 12 corner kicks in that soccer game. That tells you the territorial edge that the Planets had. That they only won 1-0 on the scoreboard, but in terms of play on the field. They totally controlled that soccer game. And then Seneca Valley's boys, you're facing the number 1 seed in Peters Township. You fall behind 3-1 by halftime. You give up the 3rd goal in the 40th minute, less than a minute to play. Peters Township adds on, takes a 2-goal lead into halftime. You're talking about a Raider team that had not allowed 3 goals to an opponent the entire season. Here they give up 3 goals in the first half. And to have the gumption to come back and win that game the way they did, just an incredible victory. And it just shows you not only the physical soccer skills that our team, some of these teams have, but the mental toughness that goes with that. Seneca Valley showed it. Mars showed it. Mars boys and Mars girls both undefeated this year. They became the first school to win the boys and girls 3A Whipkill soccer titles in the same year since Peters Township 10 years ago. But looking at the state tournament, your comments about not being surprised if these teams all get to Hershey, you're right. You only need a couple of wins to get there. It wouldn't surprise me at all either. I mean, these teams, soccer in this area just seems to keep getting stronger and stronger. We didn't even have the Freeport girls effect this year, and I figured they're going to get back into the mix probably next season, and other teams like that. So I would agree. Soccer in this area is probably, in terms of depth, probably our strongest sport countywide.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. Freeport, the girls lost to North Catholic in the playoffs. They didn't make the playoffs. They just didn't make a run.
Right.
But yeah. By the way, do I have the Karns City boys game tomorrow?
You do indeed. You do indeed. Yep.
All right. They're playing Bedford, and Bedford has that long road trip. We'll see if that affects them or not negatively.
As a matter of fact, you're gonna hear from a newspaper out the way. They're looking for your help on that game, so maybe you can help them out. So you'll be hearing from those guys. Well, that concludes our show for today as well as this season. Upon further review, we enjoyed the virtual concept this year. One of those COVID-19 related deals. Hopefully, when we come back next year, we'll be back in studio again. Myself, Mike Troy, and Derek Pyda. But thank you, as always, for watching, and thank you for following high school football in the Butler Eagle. And hopefully we will see you all next year. Thanks again.